Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Meridian as it approached the massive space station. The structure was bigger than any city on Earth, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Lights flickered across its surface like stars, and ships from dozens of alien species moved around it like insects. This was the Galactic Council Station, the center of power for 12 alien races that ruled the galaxy. Jake had been to many places in his 20 years of service, but nothing prepared him for this sight. The station had existed for over 10,000 years, built by civilizations that were ancient when humans were still living in caves. "Sir, we're receiving docking instructions," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her position at the communication station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the nervousness underneath. Everyone on the ship knew what was at stake. "Follow their guidance, Lieutenant," Jake replied. He turned to look at the woman standing beside him. Diplomat Lisa Grant had been quiet during most of the journey, studying her notes and preparing for what might be humanity's last chance at peace. Lisa was one of Earth's best diplomats. She had negotiated trade deals with the Centauri colonies and helped resolve the Mars mining disputes. But this was different. This time, she wasn't just representing one world or colony. She was speaking for all of humanity. The docking process took 2 hours. The alien technology was so advanced that their ship had to be guided by remote control. Jake watched as mechanical arms larger than buildings moved their small vessel into a docking bay that could have held 100 ships their size. When they finally stepped off their ship, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The docking bay was filled with beings he had only seen in textbooks. Tall, crystal-like creatures that seemed to glow from within walked alongside floating gas clouds that somehow maintained a vaguely humanoid shape. Other aliens looked like walking trees, while some resembled giant insects with multiple eyes. A translation device around Lisa's neck crackled to life as a crystal being approached them. "Welcome, representatives of the human species. I am Designate Zorth of the Vorthak Empire. You will follow me to the council chamber." The walk through the station took 30 minutes. Jake tried not to stare at the incredible technology around them. Walls that seemed to be made of pure energy, transportation tubes that moved beings at impossible speeds, and gravity that changed direction depending on which section they were in. Humanity's most advanced technology looked primitive compared to this. The council chamber was enormous. 12 massive thrones arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different alien species. Some floated in the air, others were submerged in pools of liquid, and one seemed to be made of pure light. Representatives from hundreds of other species filled the viewing areas, all watching as the 3 humans were led to the center of the chamber. Lisa stepped forward when prompted. Her voice echoed through the chamber as she began to speak. "Honored council members, I come before you as a representative of humanity. We seek to continue our peaceful expansion and exploration of the galaxy, as is the right of all intelligent species." The response came from a cloud of gas that shimmered with different colors. "Your species has expanded to 43 star systems in just 200 years. This rate of growth is unprecedented and dangerous to the established order of the galaxy." Another voice, this one from a crystal being much larger than the one who had met them, spoke next. "Your technology advances too quickly. Your population grows without control. You build colonies without asking permission from those who have ruled these regions for millennia." Jake felt his anger rising, but he kept quiet. This was Lisa's show. Lisa remained calm. "We have followed all established protocols. We have only colonized uninhabited worlds. We have offered trade agreements to any species that wished them. We have not attacked or threatened anyone." A mechanical voice responded from somewhere in the chamber. "Your very existence threatens the balance. Your species does not understand its place in the galactic hierarchy. You must be guided before you cause damage that cannot be repaired." The discussion went on for hours. The council members made their position clear. Humanity was growing too fast and becoming too powerful. They wanted humans to abandon most of their colonies and accept oversight from older, wiser races. Lisa argued that humanity had every right to expand and grow. She pointed out that humans had been peaceful in all their dealings with alien species. She reminded the council that the galaxy was vast, with room for everyone. But it became clear that the council had already made their decision. The crystal being that seemed to be their leader spoke the final words. "The human species will abandon all colonies beyond your original 10 star systems. You will submit to a guided development program under our supervision. You have 30 of your Earth days to comply. If you refuse, we will take corrective action to protect the galaxy from your dangerous expansion." The chamber fell silent. Lisa stood there for a long moment, looking up at the alien beings who had just demanded that humanity give up half of their colonies and their independence. Finally, she spoke. "I will carry your message to my people, but I should warn you that humans do not respond well to ultimatums. We prefer cooperation to control, negotiation to threats." The gas cloud shimmered again. "Your preferences are irrelevant. You will comply or face the consequences." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Jake spent most of that time in meetings with Lisa and his senior officers, trying to figure out how to break the news to humanity. The Council's demand wasn't just about territory. They wanted to control human development, to keep humanity as a minor species forever. When they finally reached Earth, President Carl Mitchell was waiting for them at the spaceport. The leader of the United Earth government was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been dealing with the growing tension with the Council for months, hoping that diplomacy could find a solution. Lisa's report to the emergency session of the United Earth Assembly was brief and clear. The Council wanted humanity to give up 33 colonies and accept alien oversight of their development. The alternative was war against civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. The debate that followed was intense. Some representatives argued for accepting the Council's demands. They pointed out that humanity was still young and had much to learn. Why risk everything in a war they couldn't win? Others, led by Admiral Susan Blake, argued for resistance. "If we give in now, we'll never be free," she said. "They'll control us forever, deciding how fast we can grow, where we can go, what we can become. That's not the future our ancestors dreamed of when they first reached for the stars." Dr. Peter Hayes, the government's chief scientist, presented the harsh facts. "Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. Their fleets outnumber ours by hundreds to 1. If we fight them, we might not survive as a species." The debate raged for 3 days. In the end, President Mitchell called for a vote. The result was close but clear. Humanity would not surrender its freedom. The message was transmitted across the galaxy on all frequencies. It was simple but defiant. The human species rejects the demands of the Galactic Council. We claim the right to determine our own destiny. We will defend our colonies and our independence against any threat. Jake Morrison watched from the command center as the message went out. He knew that everything had changed. Humanity had just declared its independence from the galaxy's most powerful alliance. There would be no going back. 6 months had passed since humanity rejected the Council's ultimatum. The galaxy watched and waited, expecting the ancient powers to crush the upstart humans quickly. Instead, something strange happened. Nothing. The Council, confident in their overwhelming superiority, decided to let humanity think about their mistake. They believed that given time, the humans would realize how foolish they had been and beg for mercy. This was their greatest error. On Earth, Admiral Susan Blake stood in the war room deep beneath the Capitol. Around her, holographic displays showed star maps, ship designs, and production schedules. The largest military buildup in human history was taking place, and she was in charge of it all. "How many ships can we have ready in 5 months?" she asked Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez, who was studying a tablet full of numbers and calculations. Danny looked up from his work. His face was tired but determined. "If we convert every civilian ship that can mount weapons, and if we push our shipyards to maximum production, maybe 3,000 vessels. But Admiral, most of them will be converted cargo ships and civilian transports. They won't be real warships." Susan nodded. She had expected this answer. Humanity didn't have time to build a proper war fleet from scratch. They would have to make do with what they could get. "What about the secret project in the asteroid belt?" "The hidden shipyard is ahead of schedule," Danny replied. "We should have 50 proper battleships ready, plus 200 destroyers. The asteroid miners have been incredible. They're working 20-hour shifts to get us the materials we need." Across the solar system, similar preparations were taking place. On Mars, Colony Administrator Katie Wells was coordinating the transformation of industrial facilities into weapons manufacturing plants. The Red Planet's factories, which had been making mining equipment and terraforming machinery, now produced missiles and armor plating. Katie walked through Factory Complex 7, watching as workers installed new production lines. The facility hummed with activity around the clock. Men and women who had spent their lives building peaceful tools now crafted instruments of war. "How are the workers handling the change?" asked her assistant, a young man named Tony Clark who had volunteered to help with the massive logistics effort. "Better than I expected," Katie replied. "Most of them have family in the outer colonies. They know what's at stake. Nobody wants to see their children living under alien control." In the outer colonies, Captain Ryan Foster was setting up hidden supply depots and communication relays. His ship, the cargo vessel Freedom's Edge, had been modified with stealth technology that would help it avoid Council detection. For months, he had been moving between remote asteroids and uninhabited moons, creating a network of hidden bases. Ryan stood on the bridge of his ship as they approached another asteroid. This one had been hollowed out by miners years ago, then abandoned when the ore ran out. Now it would become a secret weapons cache. "Sir, we're picking up a signal," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Beth Parker. "It's one of ours. The supply convoy from Titan." Ryan smiled. The convoy carried food, ammunition, and spare parts that would keep the hidden bases operational for months. If war came, these supplies would be crucial for any ships operating far from human space. Back on Earth, Dr. Peter Hayes was working on humanity's secret weapon. Not a new type of gun or missile, but improvements to existing technology that could give human ships an edge. In his laboratory, he and his team had been studying captured alien technology from crashed ships and abandoned stations. The Council races haven't changed their basic ship designs in over 1,000 years, he explained to his research team. They've perfected their technology, but that also means they've stopped innovating. We might be less advanced, but we're still improving. His breakthrough came in power core efficiency. By studying Vorthak crystal technology, his team had found a way to make human power cores 30% more efficient. This meant ships could move faster, shoot more often, and maintain shields longer than before. Meanwhile, weapons specialist Commander Troy Miller was developing new tactics specifically designed to fight Council ships. He had studied every recorded battle between Council races, looking for weaknesses in their fighting styles. "They fight like it's a ritual," he told his tactical planning team. "Everything is formal, predictable. They line up their ships and trade shots until one side wins. They've been doing it the same way for centuries." Troy's new tactics emphasized speed and unpredictability. Human ships would attack in small groups, hit hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond. It was a strategy born from humanity's history of fighting larger, more powerful enemies. The preparations revealed something special about humanity. While the Council races relied on rigid hierarchies and ancient traditions, humans worked through cooperation and shared purpose. Factory workers volunteered for extra shifts without being asked. Retired military officers came back to service. Scientists shared their research freely with anyone who could use it. On the moon, former freighter pilot Lisa Chang was learning to fly a military fighter. At 45, she was older than most pilots, but her experience flying through asteroid fields made her valuable for the coming war. "Why are you doing this?" asked her instructor, a young military pilot named Kevin Ross who was teaching civilian pilots to fight. "My daughter lives on New Terra Colony," Lisa replied as she climbed into the cockpit. "The Council wants to take that away from her. I won't let that happen." Stories like Lisa's were common across human space. People who had never thought about war were learning to fight because they believed in something worth defending: the right to choose their own future. As the months passed, the impossible began to happen. Humanity was building a fleet that might actually have a chance. The ships weren't as advanced as Council vessels, but they were crewed by people who had everything to lose. Admiral Blake visited the hidden shipyard in the asteroid belt as the final ships were being completed. The massive construction site had been built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, hidden from Council sensors. 50 battleships and 200 destroyers floated in the artificial caverns, ready for war. "It's magnificent," she said to Danny Rodriguez as they watched the final weapons being installed on the flagship, the UCS Liberty. "It's not enough," Danny replied honestly. "Even with all our converted civilian ships, we're still outnumbered badly. The Council has thousands of warships built by civilizations that have been fighting wars longer than our species has existed." Susan looked at the ships floating around them. Each one represented months of work by thousands of people. Engineers, factory workers, miners, technicians, all working together to give humanity a fighting chance. Maybe it's not enough to win, she said. "But it might be enough to show them that we won't go quietly." The 6-month deadline was approaching. Across human space, fleets were gathering at hidden rendezvous points. Civilian populations on outer colonies were being evacuated to safer locations. Defense satellites were being positioned around major worlds. Everyone waited for the Council's next move. Then came the message that changed everything. It was broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every human ship and station simultaneously. The voice belonged to the crystal being that led the Council, cold and emotionless. "The period of grace has ended. The human species has refused our generous offer of guidance. Therefore, we must take action to protect the galaxy from your dangerous expansion. A pacification fleet will be dispatched to your territory. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Your species will learn to accept our authority, or it will be removed as a threat to galactic stability." Admiral Blake received the message in her command center on Earth. Around her, officers and technicians stopped their work to listen. When it ended, the room was silent for a long moment. Then Blake stood up and activated the fleet communication system. Her voice reached every human ship and station in known space. "All units, this is Admiral Blake. The Council has declared war on humanity. They think they can crush us because we're young and small. They think we'll surrender when we see their mighty fleets. They're about to learn that they don't understand humans very well. All ships proceed to your assigned positions. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human freedom." As her message ended, 3,000 human vessels began to move through space, heading not toward defensive positions around human colonies but toward Council territory. Humanity wasn't going to wait to be attacked. They were taking the war to their enemies. The attack began at exactly 800 Galactic Standard Time. Across 12 star systems, human ships dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire on Council installations. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy's rulers found themselves under attack on their own territory. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the bridge of the UCS Liberty as her fleet emerged near the Rigel system. Before them lay the Council's largest military shipyard, a massive structure that had been building warships for over 2,000 years. Alien vessels of incredible size floated in construction bays, their crystal and metal hulls gleaming under the system's bright star. "All ships, this is Admiral Blake," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Target the shipyard's power stations and construction facilities. Avoid the worker habitats if possible. We're here to stop their war machine, not kill civilians." The human ships spread out in the attack formation that Commander Troy Miller had developed. Instead of approaching in neat lines like traditional Council fleets, they came from multiple directions at different speeds. Some ships moved fast and close, others stayed back and provided covering fire. The pattern looked chaotic, but it was carefully planned. The Council defenders were caught completely off guard. Their ships had been arranged in defensive positions designed to stop a traditional attack from one direction. When human ships appeared from 6 different angles, their formation crumbled. Lieutenant Amy Carter, now piloting a fighter launched from the Liberty, weaved between massive alien cruisers that were trying to turn their weapons toward the unexpected threat. Her squadron's job was to attack the shipyard's shield generators, clearing the way for the larger ships to strike vital targets. "Blue leader to all Blue Squadron fighters," she called to her pilots. "Remember your training. Hit hard, move fast, and don't try to fight fair. We're not here to win honor, we're here to win the war." Her fighters dove toward the shipyard like angry wasps, their small size allowing them to slip through gaps in the alien defenses. Amy targeted a massive shield generator, firing her missiles at the crystal formations that powered it. The explosion sent rainbow-colored energy crackling across the station's surface. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Foster led his squadron of converted cargo ships toward the Vorthak crystal mines in the Altair system. These mines provided the energy crystals that powered much of the Council's technology. Destroying them would cripple alien war production for months. Ryan's ship, the Freedom's Edge, had been heavily modified for combat. What looked like cargo containers on its hull were actually missile launchers. Its civilian appearance helped it get close to the mining station before the defenders realized the danger. "All ships, remember the plan," Ryan told his squadron. "We hit the mining platforms first, then the refinery stations. The crystals are unstable when they're being processed. A few good shots should cause chain reactions that will do most of our work for us." The attack on the crystal mines was devastating. The Vorthak had never imagined that anyone would dare attack their home system. Their defense ships were designed for ceremonial patrols, not real combat. When Ryan's converted freighters opened fire, the results exceeded even human expectations. Explosions rippled through the mining platforms as unstable crystals detonated in chain reactions. The beautiful rainbow lights that normally marked Vorthak industry turned into destructive energy storms that consumed entire installations. In another system, Commander Troy Miller was leading the most dangerous mission of all. His experimental squadron was attacking a Council communication hub that coordinated military operations across the galaxy. The station was heavily defended and surrounded by some of the Council's most advanced warships. Troy's ships were different from the rest of the human fleet. They had been fitted with prototype engines that could make short hyperspace jumps during battle. The technology was dangerous and unreliable, but it allowed ships to appear and disappear unpredictably. "Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader," Troy announced as they approached the communication station. "Remember, we're not here to destroy their ships. We just need to take out that central antenna array, hit it, and get out." The battle around the communication hub was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Troy's ships would appear, fire a few shots, then vanish again before the enemy could respond. The alien defenders found themselves shooting at empty space while human ships materialized behind them. The tactic worked perfectly. While the Council ships tried to figure out where the humans would appear next, Ghost Squadron slipped through their defenses and destroyed the communication array. The explosion left Council forces across the galaxy temporarily cut off from Central Command. Back at Rigel, Admiral Blake's main fleet was achieving its objectives. The massive shipyard that had been building Council warships for millennia was now a burning wreck. Dozens of partially completed alien vessels drifted powerless in space, their construction halls destroyed by human missiles. But success came at a price. The Council defenders, once they recovered from their initial surprise, fought back with devastating effectiveness. Their weapons were more powerful than anything humanity possessed, and their shields could absorb incredible punishment. The human destroyer UCS Defiant took a direct hit from a Vorthak battlecruiser and simply vanished in a flash of rainbow light. The converted freighter New Hope tried to ram a Council ship when its weapons failed, trading its crew's lives for damage to the enemy vessel. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the destroyer Braveheart, found himself in a deadly game of cat and mouse with a Council cruiser through an asteroid field. His ship was faster and more maneuverable, but the alien vessel's weapons could destroy him with a single shot. "Sir, their targeting systems can't keep up with our movements through the asteroids," reported his tactical officer. "If we can stay close to the larger rocks, we can avoid their main guns." Jake smiled grimly. "Then let's give them a lesson in asteroid fighting. All ships in Destroyer Group 7, follow my lead. We're going to show these aliens how humans learn to fly." The chase through the asteroid field lasted for an hour. Jake's ship darted between massive rocks, using them as cover while firing hit-and-run attacks on the pursuing cruiser. Finally, the alien captain made a mistake, following too closely as the Braveheart rounded a particularly large asteroid. Jake was waiting on the other side with a full missile spread that crippled the Council ship. As the first day of fighting ended, the results were beyond human expectations. 12 major Council installations had been damaged or destroyed. Their military production capabilities were significantly reduced, and their communication networks were in chaos. More importantly, the psychological impact was enormous. For thousands of years, the Council races had seen themselves as the undisputed masters of the galaxy. No one had ever dared to attack their homeworlds. Now a species they considered primitive had struck them in their most secure systems. Admiral Blake received damage reports as her fleet regrouped in interstellar space. 27 human ships had been destroyed, and 40 more were heavily damaged. The losses hurt, but they were far less than expected. Human tactics and determination had proven surprisingly effective against alien technology. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy," reported her communications officer. "Council forces are being recalled to defend their home systems. Their planned attack on human colonies has been postponed." Blake nodded with satisfaction. The first objective had been achieved. By attacking Council territory, humanity had forced their enemies to defend their own worlds instead of attacking human colonies. The war had been brought to the aliens' doorstep, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Council's response would be swift and terrible. Reports were already coming in of alien fleets moving toward human space. The full might of 12 ancient civilizations would soon be turned against humanity. Send a message to all human forces, Blake ordered. Phase 1 is complete. All ships return to assigned rally points for Phase 2. And get me a secure channel to President Mitchell. We need to discuss our next move. As human ships disappeared into hyperspace, heading back to their secret bases, the galaxy began to realize that something fundamental had changed. The old order, based on the Council's unquestioned dominance, was under threat for the first time in millennia. On Council worlds, emergency sessions were being called. Ancient beings who had not known fear for thousands of years now faced the possibility that their power was not absolute. Some called for negotiations. Others demanded total war against the human threat. The Vorthak Overlord, its crystal body pulsing with angry light, spoke to the emergency council session. These humans must be crushed immediately. If we allow this aggression to succeed, every species in the galaxy will think they can challenge us. But other voices urged caution. The gaseous Zilani representative shimmered with uncertainty. Perhaps we underestimated them. Their attack was coordinated across multiple systems simultaneously. This suggests planning and capability we did not expect. As the debate raged in the council chambers, human forces prepared for the next phase of their desperate war. They had struck the first blow and survived the immediate response. Now came the real test. The council's response was swift and brutal. Within days of humanity's first strike, alien fleets began systematic bombardment of outer human colonies. The gloves were off. The Council had abandoned all pretense of measured response and decided to treat human civilians as legitimate military targets. The attack on New Geneva colony was the worst. The peaceful world of 2 million farmers and researchers was defenseless against the massive Council fleet that emerged from hyperspace. The crystal ships of the Vorthak Empire didn't bother with warnings or demands for surrender. They simply opened fire on the cities below. President Carl Mitchell watched the terrible reports from his command bunker on Earth. Satellite feeds showed entire cities burning under alien bombardment. Evacuation ships trying to escape were destroyed without mercy. In 3 hours, New Geneva went from a thriving colony to a dead world. "Sir, we're getting similar reports from 6 other colonies," said his aide, looking pale as he read from a tablet. "The Council fleets aren't taking prisoners. They're treating this as extermination, not conquest." Mitchell felt rage building inside him. These weren't military targets being destroyed. These were families, children, people whose only crime was being human. The Council had shown its true face. They didn't want to control humanity. They wanted to eliminate it. "Get me Admiral Blake," he ordered, "and tell Dr. Hayes to accelerate his special project. We're out of time for half measures." In his secret laboratory, Dr. Peter Hayes was working on humanity's most desperate weapon. The Nova torpedoes were designed to destabilize stellar cores, causing massive solar flares that could disable entire star systems. The moral implications were staggering, but with human colonies being exterminated, Hayes no longer had the luxury of ethical debates. "The first batch will be ready in 72 hours, he reported to Admiral Blake during a secure communication. "But Admiral, these weapons could kill billions if they're used wrong. We're talking about destabilizing stars." Blake's face was grim on the view screen. "Doctor, they just murdered 2 million civilians on New Geneva. Children, farmers, teachers, people who never hurt anyone. If we don't stop them now, they'll kill every human in the galaxy. Give me those weapons." The plan that emerged was humanity's most audacious yet. Instead of defending their remaining colonies, they would launch Operation Deep Strike, a direct attack on the Council homeworlds themselves. Every available ship would be committed to the assault. It was all or nothing. Captain Ryan Foster, recently promoted to Admiral, was given command of the Second Fleet targeting the Zilani homeworld. His converted cargo ships had been refitted with captured alien technology, creating hybrid vessels more powerful than anything humanity had built before. "Sir, are you sure about this plan?" asked his new aide, Lieutenant Tony Clark, who had transferred from Mars after the industrial facilities there were bombed. "We're talking about attacking worlds that have been defended for thousands of years." Ryan looked at the star chart showing their target. The Zilani homeworld was surrounded by orbital defense platforms and protected by the largest fleet in Council space. It seemed impossible, but they had to try. The way I see it, Tony, we have two choices. We can stay here and watch them kill us one colony at a time, or we can take the fight to them and maybe, just maybe, convince them to stop. I know which one I choose. The fleet assembly took place at the hidden base in the Kuiper Belt. Ships that had been fighting independently for months converged into the largest human armada ever assembled. Damaged vessels were repaired with salvaged alien technology. Crews shared stories of battles fought and friends lost. Commander Troy Miller arrived with what remained of his Ghost Squadron. The experimental jump drives had proven effective, but costly. Half his ships had been lost to mechanical failures or enemy fire. Still, the survivors brought valuable intelligence about Council defensive tactics. They're learning to counter our hit-and-run attacks, he reported to the gathered fleet commanders. But they're still thinking in terms of traditional warfare. If we can coordinate simultaneous attacks on multiple targets, we can overwhelm their ability to respond. Admiral Blake stood before the assembled captains in the main briefing room of the hidden base. Around her were men and women from every human world, united by their determination to save their species. Some were career military officers, others were civilian volunteers who had learned to fight out of necessity. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is our last roll of the dice," she began. "The Council thinks they can exterminate us like insects. They believe their superior technology and ancient power make them untouchable. Today, we prove them wrong." The plan was complex but elegant. The combined human fleet would split into 3 groups. Admiral Blake would lead the main force against Vorthak Prime, the crystal world that served as the Council's administrative center. Admiral Foster would attack the Zilani homeworld with the Second Fleet. The third group, led by Captain Jake Morrison, would strike at the mechanical worlds of the Syntheri Collective. Each attack group carried Nova torpedoes. The weapons weren't meant to destroy the stars, but to cause solar flares that would disable the crystalline and gaseous infrastructure of the target worlds. It was a precision strike that would cripple the Council's ability to coordinate their forces without committing genocide. The battle for Vorthak Prime began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Blake's fleet emerged from hyperspace to find the system defended by the most powerful concentration of alien forces in galactic history. Hundreds of Council ships representing all 12 member races formed defensive lines around the crystal world. "All ships, this is Admiral Blake," she announced as the human fleet spread into attack formation. "Remember why we're here. Every human colony they've destroyed, every family they've murdered, every child who will never grow up because of their cruelty. Make them pay." The battle raged for 3 days. Human ships, outnumbered 10 to 1, used every trick they had learned. They struck from unexpected angles, used asteroids and space debris for cover, and sacrificed themselves to protect the ships carrying Nova torpedoes. Lieutenant Amy Carter, now commanding her own squadron of fighters, led repeated attacks on the Council defense platforms. Her small ships darted between the massive alien vessels, their weapons barely scratching the enemy's shields, but drawing fire away from the human capital ships. "Blue Squadron, this is Blue Leader," she called as her fighters regrouped after another attack run. "I know you're tired, but we can't stop now. Every shot we take, every missile we dodge brings us closer to ending this war. Stay with me." The turning point came when Commander Miller's rebuilt Ghost Squadron managed to penetrate the planetary defenses. Using their experimental jump drives, they appeared directly above Vorthak Prime and launched their Nova torpedo at the system's star. The weapon didn't destroy the star, but it caused massive solar flares that disrupted the crystal-based technology across the entire system. Defense platforms went offline, communication networks failed, and the beautiful crystal cities that covered the planet went dark. With their command center in chaos, the Council fleet lost coordination. Human ships pressed their advantage, striking at confused and isolated enemy vessels. The tide of battle slowly began to turn. Similar scenes played out in other systems. Admiral Foster's attack on the Zilani homeworld succeeded when his ships used the gaseous beings' own atmospheric processors against them, creating toxic storms that disabled their floating cities. Captain Morrison's assault on the Syntheri worlds overloaded their mechanical systems with electromagnetic pulses. But the cost was terrible. Nearly half the human fleet was destroyed in the 3 coordinated attacks. Ships that had survived months of fighting were lost in the final desperate push. The destroyer Braveheart, commanded by Captain Jake Morrison, was destroyed while ramming a council battleship to clear the way for the torpedo carriers. As the battles ended and the surviving human ships regrouped, the galaxy found itself in a situation that no one had imagined possible. The council homeworlds were crippled, their fleets scattered, and their authority shaken for the first time in millennia. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical damage. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under council rule for thousands of years began to question the authority of their ancient masters. If humans could strike at the very heart of council power, perhaps the old order wasn't as strong as it seemed. On Earth, President Mitchell received the battle reports with mixed emotions. The attacks had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, but the cost in human lives was staggering. Entire squadrons had been lost, including many of humanity's best officers and pilots. "Sir, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy," his aide reported. "Several council member species are requesting separate peace negotiations. The Zilani Collective has already withdrawn from active combat operations." Mitchell nodded slowly. The plan had worked. By demonstrating that they could strike anywhere in the galaxy, humanity had forced the Council to reconsider their position. But the war wasn't over yet. Admiral Blake's damaged fleet limped back toward human space, carrying the wounded and the survivors of the greatest battle in human history. Her flagship, the UCS Liberty, bore scars from dozens of weapon hits, but the peace talks began on Haven Prime, a neutral world that had never been claimed by any major power. The planet's crystal formations had been carved into meeting halls thousands of years ago, but they had rarely hosted negotiations as important as these. President Carl Mitchell led the human delegation, but he wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of species that had broken free from council control joined the discussions. The rebellion that had started with humanity's defiance was spreading across the galaxy. The council's representatives looked very different from the confident beings who had delivered ultimatums 6 months earlier. The Vorthak Overlord's crystal body was cracked and dim, damaged by the solar flares that had struck their homeworld. The Zilani representative was a pale shadow of its former self, barely maintaining coherence after the atmospheric attacks on their world. "The terms are simple," President Mitchell said as he addressed the assembly. "All species have the right to self-determination. No government can claim authority over another species without their consent. The age of empires ruling the galaxy through force is over." The negotiations lasted for weeks. Some council species were eager to make peace and rebuild their damaged worlds. Others, led by the mechanical Synthari Collective, insisted that the old order must be maintained. They argued that without central authority, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as a diplomatic advisor after being rescued from his destroyed ship, found himself working with former enemies to establish new trade agreements. The Vorthak crystals that had once powered their war machines could be used for peaceful purposes, providing clean energy for human colonies. "It's strange," he said to Dr. Peter Hayes during a break in the negotiations. 6 months ago they wanted to control us. Now they're asking for our help to rebuild their worlds. Hayes nodded as he looked over plans for joint research projects. Fear makes people do terrible things. But so does hope. Maybe now they can choose hope instead. The transformation wasn't easy. Many veterans on both sides struggled with the transition from war to peace. Admiral Susan Blake found herself overseeing the conversion of human warships into exploration and rescue vessels. The same ships that had brought terror to council worlds now responded to natural disasters and protected trade convoys. On Mars, Katie Wells was coordinating the reconstruction effort. The factories that had produced weapons of war were retooled to manufacture medical equipment and construction materials. Workers who had labored to build humanity's war machine now focused on healing the wounds left by the conflict. "The council worlds need everything," she reported to the reconstruction committee. "Food, medicine, building materials, technical expertise. Some of their worlds may take decades to fully recover from the damage." The most difficult challenge was psychological. Entire generations of alien species had grown up believing that the Council's rule was natural and necessary. The idea that they could govern themselves was frightening to many. Admiral Ryan Foster, now commanding a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels, encountered this fear during a mission to the Outer Rim territories. Local species that had heard about the war were terrified that the collapse of council authority would lead to chaos and violence. "We're not here to conquer you," he explained to the representatives of a small trading federation. "We're here to make sure you have the freedom to choose your own future. If you want to form your own government, we'll support you. If you want to join a larger federation, that's your choice too." The breakthrough came when the first joint exploration mission launched from Earth. The crew included humans, reformed council species, and representatives from newly independent worlds. Their ship, renamed the Unity, was built using technology from a dozen different civilizations. Commander Troy Miller, recovered from his injuries and promoted to captain, led the mission to explore a previously unknown region of the galaxy. The crew's diversity was its strength. Each species contributed unique skills and perspectives that made the expedition more successful than any single species mission could have been. "Captain, we're detecting signs of an ancient civilization in the next system," reported his science officer, a Zilani named Whisper of Wind who had volunteered to work with humans after the war. "How ancient are we talking about?" Miller asked, studying the sensor readings on his command screen. "Possibly older than even the council races," Whisper of Wind replied, its gaseous form shimmering with excitement. "The energy signatures suggest technology we've never seen before. The discovery of the precursor ruins changed everything." The ancient civilization had left behind records showing that the galaxy had gone through cycles of empire and rebellion many times before. The council had been just the latest in a long line of galactic governments, and they too had eventually fallen to species seeking freedom. Dr. Hayes led the research team studying the precursor technology. Working alongside alien scientists who had once been his enemies, he uncovered secrets that advanced galactic civilization by centuries. Medical techniques that could heal species-specific diseases, engineering principles that allowed faster and safer space travel, and communication methods that worked across vast distances. "The precursors face the same challenges we do," he explained to the Galactic Assembly during their first official meeting. "How do you govern a galaxy full of different species with different needs and different dreams?" Their solution was remarkable. They didn't govern at all. They created a framework for cooperation and let each species find its own path. The Galactic Assembly met for the first time on Earth, in a specially constructed hall that could accommodate representatives from over 200 species. The sight was incredible. Beings of crystal, gas, metal, and flesh working together to create something new. President Mitchell, now serving as the first elected president of the Assembly, looked out at the diverse gathering and felt hope for the first time since the war began. "We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. Each species brings something unique to our shared future. Together, we can build a galaxy based on cooperation instead of domination." The Freedom Charter that emerged from the Assembly established principles that would guide galactic civilization for generations to come. Every species had the right to self-determination. No government could claim authority over another species without consent. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation and mutual agreement, not force. The old council species adapted to the new order in different ways. The Vorthak, once proud rulers of the galaxy, became master engineers and architects, helping to rebuild worlds damaged by the war. The Zilani transformed into explorers and diplomats, their ability to exist in any environment making them perfect ambassadors to distant worlds. Even the mechanical Syntheri found a new purpose. Their precise, logical minds made them excellent administrators and record keepers for the growing assembly. They maintained the vast databases that tracked trade agreements, diplomatic relationships, and cooperative projects across the galaxy. Lieutenant Amy Carter, now a captain commanding her own exploration ship, led missions to contact species that had been isolated during the Council era. Many of these civilizations had developed in secret, afraid to reveal themselves to the galactic authorities. Now they emerged to join the growing community of free worlds. "Captain, we're receiving a response to our first contact protocols," her communications officer reported as they approached a previously unknown system. "They're asking if we're representatives of the old council or the new assembly." Amy smiled. "Tell them we represent the assembly and that we come in peace." Let them know that their independence will be respected, whatever they choose. The transformation took years, but gradually the galaxy began to heal. Trade flourished between species that had never been allowed to interact under Council rule. Scientific cooperation led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Art, music, and literature were shared across species barriers, creating a rich cultural exchange. 10 years after the war ended, Admiral Susan Blake stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting Earth. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of different worlds docked at the facility. Humans worked alongside aliens who had once been their enemies, building a future none of them could have imagined. "Do you ever regret it?" asked Dr. Hayes, joining her at the observation window. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes still held the curiosity that had driven him to develop the weapons that won the war. "Regret what?" Blake replied. "Fighting for our freedom? Refusing to accept that we had to live as subjects in someone else's empire? I mean the cost. All those people who died, all the worlds that were damaged. Sometimes I wonder if we could have found another way." Blake was quiet for a moment, watching a mixed crew of humans and aliens work together to repair a damaged freighter. Maybe there was another way. But the Council never gave us the chance to find it. They wanted to control us from the moment we stepped into space. All we did was refuse to be controlled. The memorial stations that orbited the destroyed colonies served as reminders of the price of freedom. Each year on the anniversary of the war's end, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to honor the dead and renew their